All right, it is 11 a.m. and we are ready to get started. So thank you guys for being here today and welcome. We will be presenting The Path to Career Development by Melissa Asher. Melissa is a CPS HR senior practice leader with over 24 years of experience in HR training, development, test administration, and recruitment. So just a little housekeeping before we get started. This session is being recorded. We will post a link to the recording and slide deck on the webinar page of our website as soon as it's available. To ensure a high quality recording, all attendees are encouraged to mute your mic. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your Zoom control panel. We will have time for questions at the end. Now, without further ado, Melissa, take it away.
Thanks, Marissa. And thank you everyone for joining today. This is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. As Marissa said, I've been in the HR industry for a long time, and the majority of that time has been spent in the training and development arena. I really kind of attribute it going back to when I was growing up. My mom was a teacher, an elementary school teacher, and her favorite grade to teach was fourth grade. And so when I would be available during the summers or come home from college on break, she would very often have me come in and help in her classroom. And I think that's where I really first developed my love for that whole learning and development environment. And I think going hand in hand with that for me has been myself being a lifelong learner. So when I entered the workforce, my first job was actually with a technology training organization, and I spent about 12 years there learning all about how to do technology training and all of the different platforms and applications that were available then, which pale to the number that are available even now. And then I remember being in that environment and being so curious about, oh, well, what's going on in the soft skills arena? What about leadership training? Because we were so heavily entrenched into the technical side of things. So excited to be able to move to CPS HR, where I've been spending the last 18 years or so and working more on the softer skill, the leadership training, the personal development training, and then learning a lot myself and growing along with the different work experience and different clients that I've been able to work with. So all of that just to kind of give you some context around, I guess, my perspective on this topic and why this is something that I'm so passionate about. I want to get started today with engaging you a little bit and share this quote, which I think is a good way to frame the rest of our conversation, the rest of our time together here. There's a quote from John Maxwell: "Change is inevitable, growth is optional." So I want to invite you in the chat to give me some thoughts about that. When you hear that, when you think about that, what does that make you think about? What strikes you about that quote? And just put some thoughts in the chat. Change is inevitable, growth is optional. Does that resonate with you? What does that bring to mind? Give me a little bit of feedback when you hear that. Growth does not happen without a change. Very true. It's all about how you take on the change, right? Some we can control, some we can't. Growth we can. Mindset, healthy perspective. Yep. Using it to better yourself. Change is coming whether you want it or not, whether you're ready or not. But growth is contingent on how you handle the change. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Great input here. And I think you've hit upon exactly the right kind of mindset that I was hoping to set as we move into this. As you all have pointed, change is happening all around us, but how we respond to that change really is what makes the difference. And one of the most positive, one of the most impactful ways to respond to change is to grow in some way, grow in a skill, grow in maybe our own mindset, just learning and expanding, moving from where we were to a new place. So that's exactly the place that I want you to be in as we start delving into this. And we'll start, I guess, first with the change piece. You've probably noticed that we are living in what I call in others the age of acceleration. So change, of course, has always been around, but the pace of that change that we are living in now is just increased exponentially. I've got the formula to calculate the slope of a line here. We're not going to do that today. I'm not sure I could do it, like X's and Y's and all of that. And I don't think we need to do the calculation to see the slope of that blue line is pretty much straight up. So man on the moon is when it started to take off. You hit microprocessor, word processor, computer, Apple Macintosh, and it is pretty much a straight line from there. And this really demonstrates that we are living in a time where, yes, it's rapid change. It's also sustained change, like a constant state of change and good things, right? The iPad, wow, that really opened up, have a lot of capability for new people. Driverless cars, I don't know if we're quite there yet, but certainly we've made a big stride towards electric cars. Some great innovations. What's not even on this is already pretty wildly out of date, are things around artificial intelligence, machine learning, all those chat bots that we see now, all the ways that we interface electronically to manage our lives, all of our accounts from, I do everything now, Kaiser, pretty much through my app, including sometimes a tele appointment. So just tons and tons of change that is really driving whole new ways of doing things. Kind of to underscore this, this comes actually as a chart that comes from Deloitte. I mean, technology is literally everywhere, and that is driving a lot of the change. Not all of it, but a lot of it. This statistic here, 6 billion smartphones in the world, more than that now. That was a statistic from 2020. I mentioned artificial intelligence, robotics, like manufacturing, completely done differently today than it was before. And jobs, whole jobs now that have been automated. I'll talk about how there, on the flip side of that, there are whole new jobs that have been created too as well. So in addition to those kind of top level things, if we look kind of towards the bottom of this particular graphic, we see that the change extends in other ways as well. We just have access to so much more information. But what do we do with that information, right? How are we going to use that information? Do we really need all of that information? How do we make sense out of it? And just in terms of culturally, in our organizations, the diversity that is in the workforce across all different levels. So ethnicity, generational, personality, political, right? I mean, there's just diversity just all over the workforce, and having these different generations all working together also drives this climate, this culture of where we want to try to do things differently. There is this whole move towards increasing capabilities, adding whole new capabilities, doing things a little bit differently. And the whole nature of work is changing in some ways. What we see now is that the skills that you have a shorter shelf life. They used to last a lot longer. And this is kind of a funny little graphic here with our carriage driver from thousands of years ago to our taxi driver to more recent, our Uber driver. But there are many stories, there's research out there about this, how the skills that we have now, about 50% of them we won't need in 5 years. So said another way, 5 years from now, 50% of the skills we have will be replaced by new skills. New skills. I mean, that's pretty amazing, right? And this is happening to us. It's almost like the frog that's being boiled in water. It's happening to us, but we often maybe don't reflect on it. We don't think about, wow, yeah, like I just learned a bunch of new stuff. Like I never did that before, and now this is the only way I do it. Let's just take, communications, for example. Who on the call knows what a pager is? Does anybody in the session today put it in the chat? Have you used a pager? Have you heard of a pager? Yes. Okay. LOL, right? Okay. So, right. Today, where's the pager? Yeah, high school. Exactly. Pagers are gone. Like all those companies that did that work, they are no longer with us. They all morphed. What about the fax machine? Are we still using fax machines? Who has a fax machine in their office still that they use? You still, okay, there's some out there. Very occasionally, very, very rarely. I was reading a book about the public health officers' response to the pandemic, which was just 2 years ago, or 2020 when that was starting. And one of the challenges that they had to overcome to communicate more effectively across the different counties here in California was to figure out this fax machine situation, because some folks were using just fax machines to communicate. And the other half were like, fax machines, what are you talking about? So yes, fax machine is an example. And then we went to desk phones. So we all had desk phones. But now, I don't know about you, after the pandemic, I don't even have a desk phone. I do everything voice over IP. All of my phone calls are through my computer, or maybe my mobile phone, right? But definitely no desk phone anymore. I mean, that was standard issue. So just think about how in such a short period of time with the pandemic, probably a lot of new skills that you yourself acquired, driven by necessity, driven by a change in the way that we all working together. So I want to test you on that. I want to ask you, what new skills have you learned in the past 2 years? I mean, work skills or personal skills. Just a little check-in, a little reflection for you. What new skills did you replace in the last 2 years? The way we're sharing documents. Microsoft Teams, anyone? QR codes, yes, that's a great one. Exactly, right? QR codes for all kinds of things. Ballroom dancing, that's a fun one. Yeah, so even this learning space that we're talking about here, this growth, this path to our career development, I think does extend into our personal learning as well. Learning is like a muscle. I mean, your brain, the more you practice learning, the more your brain gets comfortable with creating those pathways. I'm certainly no expert in brain science, but there is a lot of information out there about how if you can keep those pathways, those learning pathways active in your brain, it makes it easier to learn things as you go along, versus if we're just really doing things the same way all of the time. It's harder than when you do have to learn something new. Someone once told me a great way to practice this, a simple way to practice this in your own life, is drive home a different way. Like, I know we probably can go autopilot to get home, like we know it like the back of our hand, but someday when you have time, like not when you have to be home at a specific time, but just drive home a different way. Yeah, thank you, Brooke. Brooke says that they do this. You just turn on a different street, see where it goes. I mean, it's still small, simple, little things. You're going to be learning and keeping those pathways open and active in your brain. Meditating is another great practice. Lots of really, really great answers in the chat here. Agile project management, Canva, fantastic tool. Poster my wall, I don't know what that is, but that sounds amazing. I'll have to go check that out. But you see, and this, maybe I'm preaching to the choir here. I've got a group that's already interested in this, but actively learning will keep your mind engaged. It will keep you moving forward really with the way that the world is moving, and of course translates directly into the workplace. There are other driving forces behind this as well that I wanted to share, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier. This information comes from the World Economic Forum, which is a group that I follow. They do a Future of Jobs report every couple of years. They refresh it, so they're probably like every 3 to 4 years, something in that realm. They do this massive survey about the future of jobs. And I've got the link at the bottom. It's kind of a long report, but it is a fascinating report. It's an interesting read. And this information comes from the report that came out a couple of years ago now, because it was done with data from 2020. And at that time, they definitely validated that the jobs are changing. There are 85 million jobs that are going to be displaced over the next 5 years. And that was the horizon that they took for this data. What can we expect by 2025, which, right, doesn't seem that far away now. This is what they were predicting: 85 million jobs displaced. So in some form or fashion, changing. 97 million jobs of tomorrow, I put that's how they coined it, created. So this gives you just a good idea of why skill development and continuing to grow professionally will help us 2025 and beyond. The jobs are changing, and by being able to stay up to date, we're going to be able to be more valuable in the workplace, and ideally lead to maybe either a change in the industry laterally or even upward mobility. New skills are going to be needed because some of these jobs, they just don't even exist now. So it takes someone like you on this meeting here today, on this webinar, to say, yeah, that's a brand new job. That sounds great. I'd like to learn something new. I want to do something different. Let me grow in that area and step into that new space. Really thinking of this as an opportunity for all of us. You've probably seen some of these numbers just in the news. This is just more substantiation, more evidence that growing your skills will help you in your career, because I think this was March data, 11.5 million job openings. So there are more job openings really than there are almost people who can step into those jobs. I know they're talking a little bit of recession now, that probably will start to slow down, but I don't think the premise that will go away. I don't think we have, and I work in the recruiting business as well as training and development, we don't have as many people applying for jobs as there are jobs available. And I've got some data on the bottom here that is specific to technical jobs, but it really is across the board. It's across the board. So not just technical jobs, but jobs in general. The other data point to support this that we're seeing is that a large number of the HR professionals out there are saying that folks who are applying don't have the skills they're looking for, right? They're not qualified in some form. They're lacking some skill or some experience, maybe a competency. So those two factors, more jobs out there than we can fill, and the HR professionals who are trying to fill these jobs are finding that there is a skill gap. That people who are applying for these skills applying for the jobs don't have all of the skills that we need. So this again speaks to opportunity to grow your skills. Skills are simply going to be the new currency. This is, I think, especially true in the public sector. So I know there's a comment in there about how tech companies are probably doing some layoffs, and talks of recession probably do translate a little bit more to an impact in the private sector. I think in the public sector, we are in a bit of a more of a unique situation where we have more opportunity to move and grow across departments. So if there is going to be one area that is going to be scaling down, if an individual is willing to grow some skills, to learn how to do some new work, some new jobs, there is more opportunity for them to be able to move about within the public sector. We're not seeing a lot, at least from where I'm sitting in the public sector. It's still hiring. We do a lot of work with the state of California. We're working with 3 departments now that are all trying to hire in the hundreds of people. Hundreds, not 5, not 10. They are hiring hundreds of people to staff, in some cases, entirely new units. So it's a good time to be reflecting on what you're interested in and how you can build your skills. So when you think about your skills, I know we talked earlier, I mentioned soft skills versus, this says hard, I called them technical skills. Another way to think about skills, about the skills you have and about the skills you want to develop, is in terms of durable or perishable. And I'm going to add another one here. I'm going to add transferable, because I think that's an important piece, and that really lines up with those durable skills. Durable skills are going to last longer, and they're going to translate across more jobs and across potentially even different types of industries. So these are very often mindsets or dispositions, maybe things that are much more entrenched. So a whole framework of doing something and a whole approach to doing something, taking initiative, being able to effectively communicate with others, public speaking, very durable skill. Leadership, I think, often gets probably lumped into this, people who have natural leadership skills. Critical thinking, right? That's a durable skill. If you can solve problems, if you can think through how to solve problems, that can apply in any job, in any organization, across any industry. Semi-durable, a little less enduring, right? So they probably won't last you as long, but these do have some staying power. So these are things that are more like the models, maybe some industry frameworks, tools, technologies, processes that are pretty entrenched maybe in the work that you do. So in the training and development world, I think about the ADDIE model, the ADDIE model, which is a tried and true model for how developing all the way through delivering training. So pretty durable, although that has started to become eroded with some of the more agile project management ways of interacting. But that's a good example. So these semi-durable skills do get replaced as the field grows or evolves. We did some interesting work with Department of State hospitals, and in the medical field, I mean, you see this a lot, like as new technology, new techniques come out, like whole processes get replaced. There is a protocol if one of the residents there, one of their patients swallows something, there's a whole protocol that, as we were working with them, completely changed with how they dealt with that. So semi-durable skills, useful, helpful, but going to change likely as your field grows, more information comes available. Perishable skills are things that are going to be more specific to maybe a platform, or if you're in technology, maybe a coding language or a process. I think about like WordPerfect. WordPerfect was a word processing software back when I was in that technical training, computer training world that everybody loved and nobody wanted to take Word Perfect away. Well, no Word Perfect today. Today it's Microsoft Word, or maybe you're using Google Docs. So that became a very perishable skill. And some of the examples you put in the chat, I think, speak to that too, like Canva. Canva is a whole new way of doing presentations, infographics, a whole new way of creating ways to visualize data. So those are perishable skills. So you still need those, and those are still good to learn because there will be a portion of those that will constantly be replaced. Just again, as the tools in your workplace evolve. Power BI, that's a great one. Tableau is another platform to build dashboards, but Power BI is a great one. We're seeing a huge resurgence in Excel, but not Excel, how do I do formulas? How do I do a spreadsheet? Excel and how do I do pivot tables? You know, how do I create macros? You know, how do I get to automate more of these things? So interesting way to think about your skills and the way, and as you're thinking about what you want to grow, how you might want to focus on all three of those areas: durable, semi-durable, and perishable. What I think is really important, and one of the key points I want to get across today, is learning is actually a skill. And I really, you probably know people who don't practice this on a regular basis. But I really encourage you to think of this as a skill that you practice regularly. And this comes, the quote on the screen here comes from Manpower, which is a recruiting group here, but employability depends less on what you already know and more on how well you can learn, apply, and adapt. So to that end, following on from that World Economic Forum data I showed earlier, they talked about the top 15 skills needed for 2025. So again, as you're thinking about how do you want to grow your career, this is what some of the data points to in terms of the top skills that are going to be in demand for the types of jobs, for the types of careers that are going to be needed. And I've got on the screen here the top 6. And number 2 is active learning and learning strategies. So, wow, this World Economic Forum has recognized that learning is actually a skill that people need to focus on. What's also kind of interesting about this list here is number 1, number 3, and number 4 are all really tied to your ability to think, your ability to problem solve, your ability to go beyond the assigned task and take some initiative to solving problems and thinking about things a little bit differently. Finding some creative ways, even in some cases. And that's where number 5, I think, piggybacks off of 1, 3, and 4, which are all around analytical thinking, critical thinking, being creative. You know, we have Google at our fingertips, right? A day doesn't go by, I don't Google, I don't know how many things. If I need to learn something new, you know, a quick Google what's on YouTube about that. So using the tools we have to think through things differently, apply some creativity, some originality, and to take some initiative. Also making the list, which I think is important and speaks to those durable skills that we were talking about earlier, is leadership and social influence. So if you boil that down, that really is the ability to get along with people, whether that's in-person people or whether it's now in a remote capacity with people, because that is a skill too. How do you develop relationships if now we're a hybrid team? How do I maintain those relationships? How do I keep being able to influence my team or my manager? How do I manage up if I'm not seeing my manager, if we're operating more in this remote world where I'm in Zoom meetings with them all the time? So important skill, getting along with others, getting along well in that workplace. So there are 15. Again, I've got that link at the bottom if you're interested in the other skills. A lot of the other skills line up around technology, but emotional intelligence, also hits the list. Persuasion, negotiation. So it is an interesting list of 15, but I think these top 6 really are great areas of focus. So how do we apply this then? How do we take kind of what I've shared in terms of the environment, in terms of the opportunity? Well, for us, it really is probably going to be learning and growing in one of 3 buckets, either upskilling, reskilling, or next skilling. So upskilling is where you're going to learn additional skills or enhanced abilities in your current job. And I'll talk to a couple of examples here. So in your current job, you're learning new skills or enhancing what you are currently doing. Reskilling is a whole new set of skills, which might then serve you well where you're at, but also are probably applicable or moving you towards a new role. And then next skilling is really reskilling, but in a whole new area. I mean, really like taking your set of skills and moving that to a whole new area. So a couple of examples here just to try to make this a little bit more real. And I'll talk about it maybe first in the recruiting standpoint. So in recruiting, there's a lot of changes in the way that we now post positions. Certainly we're writing very aspirational job descriptions. This has not been the tradition for public sector, but really trying to write those job opportunities in a way that is more appealing, that's more plain language, and that really does speak much more to mission, right? Versus a duty statement, which is very prescribed, very important, but not as easy to draw someone into. So that would be an example of upskilling. So writing these job postings and in a way that is much more attractive and appealing. So that would be upskilling. Now, so the reskilling is, so not only are we doing that, but now we're taking those announcements and we're putting them on new platforms. We're using social media to do that. Maybe we're even doing Facebook ads. I know we've got several clients now where we are working and doing Facebook ads and Google ads, you know, click per or pay per click types of things where we're capturing the metrics behind the clicks for the ads that we're doing in different areas. So wow, like we've really taken this to a whole new level. We're really kind of crossing over more into the marketing world in terms of the way that we're approaching these job postings and the way they're going out there, and we're actually learning media skills in terms of building awareness about those jobs. So next skilling would be that whole jump maybe into more of a marketing career. Maybe it's video production, because we're also seeing the recruiting world that we were doing more with video editing. We're creating these little 30-second, you know, maybe a 2-minute little video about the job opportunity or about the organization. Very transferable. I mean, totally could be used in a whole different context in a different industry. So 3 different ways to grow, and all of them are good. All of them are good. Upskilling in your current job is going to help you. We already kind of went down that path, right? The pager, the fax, you know, now voice over IP, or those folks out there using Power BI. These are powerful tools within your current job that are going to make your job easier, and great ways for you to grow your skills. So how do we get started now if we want to say, okay, great, Melissa, you know, give me some more ideas about, you know, how do I really hone in on this and get started? So really 3 things. Number 1, and could be almost the hardest one, I think, sometimes, is to kind of slow down and pay attention to what really interests you. We do a lot of different things every day in our job, but what really interests you in the work that you're doing, or what really disinterests you, what you really dislike doing, and so we want to stay away from those. But focusing on the positive, what really interests you, is a great first step. We'll talk a little bit about doing some self-assessment. I'll recommend some tools for you there. And then the third there is really seeking additional feedback. So going down this path and starting with paying attention, this is a journal. It's a learning journal. That's what the picture is there, a book. Let's learn our way through it, shall we? And it literally is a journal, 365 days. And for each day, there's space for you to record what you've learned, right? And how you have grown. And that could be really, really small. Something like I learned how to work better with Marissa, maybe through this interaction I had today. Perfect. You know, maybe I learned how to upload a spreadsheet into Power BI. And so now I'm that much closer to being able to start creating dashboards, right? Something simple. So pay attention to that by capturing those perhaps in a journal, by jotting down the things that you like doing and that you like learning. Where do you get your energy from at work? Where are you working? What kind of work are you doing where time just flies by and you're so engrossed in it, you look up 2 hours later and you're like, wow, 2 hours went by. Focus on that. Those are probably going to be areas of strength, but definitely that can really help you understand what is it that you like doing. That's a great place to start to build on and learn more. Secondly, how do you like learning? There are lots and lots of different modalities now for learning. So taking a minute to think about, do I like learning in a group environment? Do I like learning through self-paced, training, something that I can do on my own? Do I like reading to learn? Do I like talking with others and learning that way? How do you like learning? Also pay attention to what you can do to stay current in your industry. Every industry is growing and changing. Remember that curve? Remember that straight up line? Every industry is changing. So even you might think, well, procurement, what's going on in procurement? Well, I bet you there are some new rules. There's some new ways of creating contracts. There's some new ways of maybe streamlining contracts that somebody in that industry is doing. So pay attention to that. You don't have to be an expert in it, but just kind of stay a little bit current with what is going on in the current industry that you're working in. And also think about how you might branch out with your learning. So this really kind of dovetails with what do you like learning. So let's say what you really like learning maybe is more outside of your current work. It's maybe tangential, maybe you do a little bit, but it's not as directly related, but you really enjoy that. Well, then find out what's going on in that industry. One of the best things, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier about learning, is the more you learn, it will benefit you in your current role because it will spark new thinking. You will have new thoughts when you put something that seems disseparate together with your current job. There are always pieces of it that can apply. A lot of the times, an activity we do in training is you take two things that are completely separate and the exercise is you put them together. So a bicycle and a radio, right? How do you put those two together? A bicycle and a toaster. How do you put those two things? They seem so separate. How do you put them together? And what do you learn by putting them together? So a great exercise to boost, again, just kind of your learning and getting into this space of being open. Taking an assessment is another great way to get started on this. And I've got 3 of them listed here, but there are a ton. Strengthsfinder 2.0 is a very easy assessment to take. They've got a version, a very low cost version. The book I think is like $19.99 and it comes with the assessment. With that, you get to see your top 5 strengths. There's something like 35 strengths. And in the book, they talk about what each of those are. Take that assessment, you'll see what your top 5 strengths are. And the strengths are really things that are durable. The strengths are really things that are transferable. So achievement is one of the strengths that I have. And so I use that in everything I do. If I have a task that I'm not very excited about doing, I have to turn it into a game. I turn it into a game. Like, okay, I really don't, want to, call these 10 people, but let me turn it into a game of, how fast can I get this task done? And maybe instead of 10, I'll call a bonus 2 more. So I'll actually do 12 in a 2-day period, just to challenge myself to make it kind of bring in that achievement aspect to it, to make that task more palatable. So a lot of the strengths in Strengthsfinder are like that, can be applied across pretty much anything you're doing. Emotional Intelligence 2.0, another great book. That book is going to be more around probably getting to those leadership skills, or those how do I get along with other people types of skills. There's kind of 4 quadrants that it talks about: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. So different ways to see how am I doing in those different quadrants, and how can I grow my skills in communication and in relating with and building relationships with people. Those skills will help you in your personal life, as well as certainly in the work life. And then leadership practices inventory, another one, I think that's 30 items, self-assessment. So pick up one of these, or you may know of others. If anybody else has taken a self-assessment that they would recommend, throw it in the chat so we can all see. Doing a little bit of self-reflection is a great way to kind of get you focused in where am I already really strong, so I can grow and be even stronger, or where are some areas I'd like to be stronger in and now I can focus on. So let's talk about feedback here. How do you feel about seeking feedback? Just give me a little bit in the chat here. How do you feel about seeking feedback? We've all done this in our career. Sometimes maybe it hasn't gone as well as it has in other cases. But how do you feel about seeking feedback? Helpful, insightful, always room for improvement. I appreciate it. Yep. Sometimes we have a blind spot, right? That feedback can reveal. That's great. This group looks like they're very, very open to it. I like feedback. Oh, Karen, thank you. Sometimes when we receive feedback, we can kind of analyze it or internalize it and go to the negative. So I like to talk about and think about feedback as a gift, And what I want to share with you are a couple of ways that I think help ensure that it is seen as a gift, that it is this positive that you all are talking about, because we all have blind spots. Like we've heard a lot over the last couple of years about unconscious bias or implicit bias. There are things about our thinking, about the way we behave, that we just can't see. But if we're seeking feedback and we do it in a manner where we're asking, right? If I'm asking for feedback, that's a lot different than someone coming to me and saying, hey, Melissa, this didn't go well, and here's why, and no, right? If I'm saying, hey, Bob, give me some feedback about this. Or even if Bob, who's going to give me feedback, approaches me and says, hey, I have some feedback. Is it okay if I give you some feedback? Right there, like, I'm like, yes, of course, yes, I want that feedback. So the way we approach it, either asking for it directly, or think about this if you're going to give feedback to somebody else. Start it out with, hey, I have some feedback. Is it okay if I give you some feedback? Are you open to receiving a little bit of feedback? Really makes this whole situation of giving and receiving much more palatable. And being open about it then to receive that feedback without becoming defensive. And then knowing at the end of the day that you get to decide what to do with that feedback. I think that's an important piece, right? Not all feedback is actionable. All feedback is good for reflection. All feedback is good to reveal something that we didn't know before. I thought it came across this way, but clearly based on your feedback, I could have done that better. I could have done it differently. So asking, being open, and then knowing that you then get to decide. So with kind of those 3 steps, kind of going on that self-discovery journey, what do you enjoy doing? What do you like doing? Growing those skills, doing some self-assessment to understand strengths already. When you build on a strength, your growth can be really exponential. It's important to work on skill areas though where maybe you don't have much of a strength as well, but just know that that growth will be a little bit slower coming, but is also really, really important. So, and I alluded to this earlier when I talked about YouTube and how, I like that resource. Right now, we're just in a time where there are all kinds of opportunities for learning. So I just wanted to touch on these and then even ask you all what you might recommend. But a lot of organizations now are sponsoring some sort of learning and development. There is definitely a recognition with organizations, with agencies, that they need to invest in their people. It's a retention strategy as much as anything else, but certainly helps in any business, agency, department, because things are growing and changing. If we just think about the public sector, the expectations of our citizenry, of our the public that we serve, have changed even over the last couple of years with the pandemic. Much more of self-service. So the organization most likely is sponsoring opportunities. They're also probably more willing to send you out to training. So that's an opportunity as well. There's also lots of ways to get on the job training. And this is where I really, really encourage you to partner with your supervisor. And even, colleagues or peers, like what are the on the job cross training opportunities? Do you have an opportunity to lead a meeting? Do you have an opportunity to create a presentation? Do you have an opportunity to go and learn Canva and then come back and brief your unit or your department on how this can be a useful tool? So look for those on the job opportunities and ask your supervisor for them. Lots and lots of webinars and live virtual training. Some of these are pre-recorded, some of them are live. Great opportunities. I see lynda.com in the chat. Actually, I think that was the basis for LinkedIn Learning now. I think, yes, yep, quite exactly. LinkedIn Learning is a great tool. And it's a very affordable. I want to say the last time I checked, something like $29 a month. And you can go month to month. So I know I've done that before where I had to really brush up on something. I've gotten the subscription from LinkedIn Learning, done my learning for the month, and then canceled out my subscription. $29. Lots of great resources there, from technical all the way to those soft or durable types of skills. I talked earlier about being in touch with your industry, like staying current with your industry. There is guaranteed there is an association associated with the work that you are doing. I mentioned procurement earlier. There are associations of procurement professionals. If you're in city management, ICMA, is an association dedicated to that. MMANC, Municipal Management Association of Northern California. They also have Southern California. Great organizations for public sector folks who are, and they're in all kinds of different industries, but really focused on leadership, building leadership across the public sector. MMANC, MMASC. And they have conferences, they do workshops, they have free webinars. So lots of different opportunities within these professional associations, plus the bonus of networking with other individuals that are like-minded, that are skilled in that area, that you can learn and grow from. Maybe if you're new to an area, especially useful to develop some relationships with people who are maybe more seasoned in the profession. They can mentor you, and mentoring doesn't mean, oh, we meet, every week or we go to lunch. Mentoring might just be as simple as, hey, every once in a while I have a question about something and I'd love to be able to call you and pick your brain. And I guarantee you people in the associations I've been in would be more than happy to help mentor and coach anyone who approached them in that particular manner. YouTube is great. I've been recently kind of getting into podcasts. This works particularly well if I do it when I'm running or when I'm out walking. I've got a whole bunch of them. I've got one I listen to on artificial intelligence just because I'm interested in it. Does that have anything to do with the work I'm in? Not especially, but I'm interested in it. And I do think that there will be, machine learning or some component in lots of different ways that eventually I'll be able to utilize. I can't see it now, but it's interesting. And it's always fun to come out with some new information to share with friends and family, as well as coworkers. So podcasts are great. Lots of podcasts on leadership. Thank you, Robert, for putting in Harvard Business Review webinars. Fantastic resources. So think about, again, when you gotta get a little bit of focused on if you're upskilling, reskilling, or next skilling, and maybe you're not sure about next skilling. So find a podcast or find a webinar about that area to see if it interests you. If you're getting a little bit deeper into it, is this still something that you want to pursue? Is this going to take you either to upward mobility or a lateral move into a whole nother area? So we're starting to kind of wind down here a little bit. I mean, this really shifts now to putting it all together and making a plan, doing some self-discovery, as I've talked about, then making a plan around the area of development that you're going to pursue. Get to work the plan, as they say. Stick to it, because life can intervene. And if sticking to it means that, well, originally you thought, you would do it over 3 months, but life has intervened. Now it's 6 or 8 months. It doesn't matter. That's perfectly fine. The fact of the matter is you're on the journey, and every bit of learning that you do is adding to your value as an employee, and probably, as just a person in general, in terms of the way you relate with other people. And then you will reach your goal. So before we go, I want to share 3 more thoughts for you. No matter where your journey goes, no matter what your plan is, 3 things that will help you future-proof your career. And I'm going to say also help you advance in your career. And when I say advance, again, I'm talking very broadly, because advance doesn't always mean a promotion. Advance might be, wow, now I'm going to go into IT. Like, I think analysts, I think about the analyst classification across government is kind of a generic classification, but a lot of the skills that analysts are starting to grow really moves them into data analytics and maybe even into IT, right? So future-proofing or advancing your career. 3 things: attitude, preparedness, and effort. And what I like about these 3 things is you are in direct control of these 3 things. No one controls these for you. These are all wholly under your control. And I just know from what I'm seeing in the chat here that this group is already with me in attitude. We talked right out of the gate about mindset when we looked at the quote from John Maxwell. So choosing growth. Step 1, choose growth. Choose to step out of the comfort zone and to learn something new. It takes courage to do that. I think in government, we definitely have a reputation for being risk averse, but choose to try something new. Choose to grow in some way. And then preparedness. Try to do something, maybe not every day, but make it a regular practice for you. Practice makes perfect. Prepare for that opportunity that you don't even know is out there yet. So that's why I like to go down this path of what interests you. What are you drawn to? What do you like to do? Because remember those 97 million jobs that are going to be created that we don't even know about now? Some of those are going to be in your interest areas. And if you continue to grow and learn and practice and prepare by growing and learning and doing podcasts and taking webinars, on some sort of a regular basis, you will be more prepared for when those opportunities drop in on you. You're going to have stories, you're going to have context, you're going to be able to share, because this is a great question in interviews, is like, what have you done to learn more about your industry? It shows initiative. So take that opportunity, be prepared, and then putting the effort in. And this, again, totally under your control. It doesn't mean that you're doing this every single day, but you're paying attention to this. You're coming back to it, and you're putting the time in to figure out what it is you want to do, and then set aside that time, on the weekend. I do this sometimes on, during the weekend. I'm like, oh, I'll listen to a project management webinar. I want to learn more about agile project management and how that's translating from the IT world into everyday project management. So put that effort in. Others will notice that you are putting that effort in, and that will translate to you being proactive in terms of growing and adding value, certainly for yourself, but also for your organization in the job that you are doing, because you'll be able to apply things that others who don't move forward with learning new skills or being willing to explore new skills, they won't be able to do that. So you're in charge of these: attitude, preparedness, and effort. And I wish you well in your journey, in your skill building journey. All of the data we talked about today hopefully illustrates how important this is going to be, really, for all of us in this interesting but fun age of acceleration that we are living in. With that, I will turn it back over to Marissa. And I think we've got just a couple of minutes in case there are some questions.
Thanks, Melissa. So as she said, we will now be accepting any questions. If you guys have any, just put them in the chat box and we'll get to them. We do end at 12 o'clock. So feel free to stick around, or if you have any questions you'd like to ask Melissa directly, feel free to email her. Otherwise, we will wait here a few minutes.
The recording will be shared. Yeah, we definitely recorded it, and that will be shared. I think, Marissa, you'll be making that available.
Yes. So I'm going to post the link to where you can find later today, not immediately after I have to upload the video, but where you will find the slide deck and the recordings.
And I want to thank everyone for the chat. Really great comments in the chat. There's some good resources that people put in the chat. I love, Cordell, I love this. Be groundbreaking. I love that. That is a great way to think about it, particularly in the world that we're living in now. Don't break the ground, but be groundbreaking, right? That's awesome.
So Marissa, that link that you sent, the slides will be available later?
Correct.
Okay, thank you
Yes.
so much.
Later this afternoon, they should be up.
Okay, and thank you, Melissa, so much.
Oh, thank you.
Giving me a whole different way of looking at career development.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's
great.
like a complete shift. It's like you're not looking at a particular job and trying to hone up on it. You're looking from a broader perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that.
You are very welcome. Marissa, do we have someone with their hand up?
Yes, that was me.
Yeah.
I thank you so much. I so appreciated this. I think you have helped me with, like, I'm in affordable housing as a lead. So I train staff, but I'm looking to learn about things outside of work, on my own free time, things that I'm more passionate about. So gardening, I'm taking a gardening certification class, and I'm like, oh, it is connected in the sense that I'm learning leadership skills. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, fantastic.
I do have a question. So since COVID, we've been mostly working from home in the
Yep.
public government sector with 1 day in the office, and we're probably going to return to working in the office full time, in the future, they said.
Mhm.
Are there any roles in the public sector that you know of that could be more hybrid or more remote? Like, is there any indication or any knowledge that you have about that?
Well, I can tell you from what we're seeing, and we've been talking with a lot of our clients about this, and encouraging them to look at all jobs and find hybrid options. It's just we've proven that jobs can be done remotely, and so giving people a little more flexibility will be a tremendous retention tool. So we are seeing a lot of the more progressive public sector agencies embrace the opportunity. I hate to say this, the opportunity of the pandemic, but maybe more of the lessons learned from the pandemic, that people can be much happier in their job if you provide a little bit of flexibility in terms of some in office and some working from home. So we are seeing for the first time ever a big shift to embracing hybrid schedules, which would be, maybe 3 days in the office and 2 days out. So we're definitely seeing that. It's not across the board. It kind of depends on your agency. It certainly depends on the job that you're doing, but I would think in a housing authority, probably there are certainly pieces that could be done remotely. There's probably pieces that you do on site potentially, if you've got, housing projects that you're working on. But yeah, we're definitely seeing a move to hybrid. If I would encourage you to gently nudge at your organization if that conversation is not happening, for them to start considering and asking that question as to why can't there be some hybrid schedules developed.
Thank you. I'm unionized, so yeah, definitely something that we're proposing.
Yeah, that's great. I know SEIU, the state of California's union, I think they even got past a stipend. There's some sort of a stipend, I think, now if you're classified as, there's a couple different levels of like full-time or part-time kind of hybrid. So good. Yeah, I
I'm
think that's gonna be.
SEIU.
Oh, you are? Yeah.
Yeah.
That there is for the state of California. I don't know what all the different units are, but my husband worked for the state of California, so that's why I know he and his team got this stipend now because they're still 100% remote.
Wow, amazing. Oh, I feel like our department, we're not like property managers. There's other departments that are, but
Okay.
we don't really have to meet with people all the time. So
Yeah. So why can't you do that job? I mean, you've got, have computer, will travel now, right?
thank you.
Thank you.
With the stipend after they take the taxes out, it's not worth the trouble.
Oh, it is a small stipend. That's true. Gosh, I didn't realize that. That's a bummer. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, it is worth the trouble, but you get my point.
Yeah.
Cordell, you have your hand up. Do you have a real quick question before we sign off?
Can you hear my voice?
Yes.
So I really want to thank Melissa for this presentation. I was very inspired with this because what I put in the chat earlier was the city of Richmond. We're dealing with issues regarding with career development, and it's like, oh dear. So what I will do is I will take all this information from today and I will share it with HR on how they can go to that phase. So that I mentioned it.
Thank you, Cordell. I appreciate that. I really appreciate all your active chatting today. You definitely provided some really good information in the chat. So wish you well. And if I can help in any way, I'm happy to have a conversation. with anyone. A lot of these things are really low cost. So, I mean, I think that's the benefit of a lot of these webinars, a lot of these associations, the podcast. A lot of this stuff is free or very low cost. LinkedIn Learning does cut rate deals for organizations, if that's a preferred type of a learning mechanism. I mean, I'm not, promoting that, but it is one of those lower cost options. So lots and lots of ways now affordably that people can learn.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up now. Thank you for being here. Again, we will post the link to recording and I cannot talk. It's been a long hour. A link to the recording on the webinar page of our website, cpshr.us, as soon as it's available later this afternoon. And once again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks, Marissa. And thanks, everyone. Good luck with your development and on your journey.
Thank you.